Well, thank you very much for that introduction. And I was thinking on the way here that visiting Nuffield in its previous building was something that I did so regularly. And there were so many issues over the course of my career where Nuffield has been driving change, making recommendations, supporting research projects, etc., etc. And it's had an enormous impact on me and for me in a way which other organisations have done it in their own particular way, but Nuffield have really been special in terms of my career and experience. I'm just going to say a few words about my kind of initial response to the project, and some issues came up very early on. With Surya talking about her view about what the project might be if you could get the resources and the commitment to actually deliver it. So I think that particularly for me, the term expressions of self is a very significant and important one. And I think that that clearly is so when it comes to some of these challengeable issues such as race and religion. So the expression of oneself when it comes to what we believe, what we do, what we think, what we feel about those issues of race and religion couldn't really be more significant. We express who we are by what we do, what we think and what we believe. And I think that it's one of the fundamental issues for every human being, how they come to learn about themselves and express themselves in the lifelong journey that begins from birth until the day we die. So for the baby crying, it's likely to be a significant expression of self. The baby's hungry, feels hungry. The baby feels cold. The baby feels lonely. The baby feels excited. The baby feels playful. But the way that they come to express that and the way that it's heard and responded to by their parents or other people is hugely significant in terms of their development, who they actually become, the formation of their identity through childhood, middle childhood, adolescence and into adulthood. And I think for the older child, it may be different in the way that they come to feel they want to express themselves. And there are many ways, as we know, with adolescents that they might actually do that. But it generally is an expression of something where there's some degree of uncertainty or something that they feel that's really important to them. But I think that there's always an underlying issue about that basic question throughout childhood and adolescence and into adulthood. That basic question, who am I, and am I lovable as the person that I actually am? And I think one of the issues about the expressions of self when it comes to questions like race and religion is that there can be very significant uncertainties about the answer to that question. So if I am LGBTQ+, if I'm Christian by religion or Islamic by religion, and I think some of the horrible things that are going on in the world at the moment with fighting and death between different countries expresses those issues in a very, very powerful and disturbing way. When we come to children who come into care, there may be various issues when it comes to their expression of self. When it comes to thinking about their own birth parents, are they coming to care because their parents hate them? Is there something wrong with the child that where the parent is actually saying, I can't do any more of this, off you go? Why are you doing this to me? The child may actually feel. There are similar issues, I think, when it comes to the new carer. Who are you? The carer might feel or say to the child, why are you doing this to me? The carer may say, who are you? Trying to understand your history, your development, what it is about you which makes you stand out even as a young individual. There may be that question, are you going to look after me in a way that I haven't experienced to date? Are you going, for how long are you going to look after me? Is this just overnight? Is it going to be 6 weeks? Is it going to be 6 years? Or is it going to be for the rest of my childhood and adolescence? And of course, what may run through a lot of those issues too are that basic question about are you going to look after me, and if you are going to look after me, how long? And for many children, certainly in foster care, that question about how long that relationship is going to last is often a very difficult one, and difficult one for the foster carer as well. So those issues about identity, those issues about self, they're fundamental drivers when it comes to this question about how we come to express ourselves and what we mean when we're expressing ourselves, both the good things and the bad things. But I think that there are some really fundamental questions, which is fundamental also to this project, about how we answer those questions in a way which allows a child to feel that they can express who they are, their self, and feel good about it. Now, I mean, the way that foster carers deal with that, is fundamental to all of this. But of course, there will be a range of other professionals that may be a part of this too. So teachers at school, how does a child come to express themselves in the classroom, about their homework, about the difficulty that they're having with a particular subject? There are issues about therapists or sports coaches. Those issues about kind of how relationships come to develop and how the child expresses their self to all of those people is going to be very significant indeed. And of course, that fundamental fear that nobody is actually going to listen to who I am, and it may indeed result for the child an angry or rejecting response from the adult that is trying to understand the child or is coming into contact with the child. So just to say that some time ago, and this is Saria has just reminded me of this in the last week or so, we were holding a meeting of Quorum Bath's Black and Minority Ethnic Advisory Committee. Saria become a member of that committee. We meet about 4 times a year, sometimes six times a year, to explore our own approach to those fundamental issues. And at the end of one of the meetings, she actually raised some very significant questions, which actually come back to that issue. Do we understand when it comes to minoritized children and young people, or whatever the kind of their history and heritage actually says about them? Do we understand about what it means to express oneself and to feel that it becomes a part of one's identity and a part of one's life? As the child grows to development. So she raised some of the questions that I've just outlined, and put a lot of effort about the importance of us exploring in detail what expressions of self actually mean, and particularly for those people, for those young people who have had lived experience. And I think that was the beginning in a very significant way. So as and her colleagues have driven that question since that early meeting, and it's the basis on which the project has developed and come up with the recommendations and the insights that I think we will come to value very much over the years to come. So they're the issues that we're going to be hearing about and discussing over the course of the afternoon. We have a whole afternoon to listen, explore and respond. It's wonderful to have such a diverse group of people here, some of whom I know, and others I hope I might get to know, even if it's in the course of the afternoon, where the whole issue about expressions of self need to be acknowledged as one of the primary issues for the human species in a thoughtful, positive and responsive way. We need to learn and we need to respect what we hear about other people, particularly when they express it directly and they're having a struggle with it themselves. I also wanted to acknowledge, there are a whole series of projects that I've been involved in through Nuffield, which in one way or another have added to our insight and our knowledge about the children's social care system. And we're at a stage where there is possibly going to be some improvement, some change in that children's social care system as a result of the Josh McAllister report, but we still have some way to go. But I really did want to acknowledge the opportunity that Nuffield has made in funding this project and many other projects in improving and developing the care system as we come to know it. We have a long way to go, but as we come to know it. So that's my very brief introduction. We're going to now hear the detail of some of the research findings. Are you going to do that, Zoe, as a group of you? Okay. Good. Okay.
One thing. If control off, and now I have a pocket. Yes. Great. Yeah, I didn't know my blazer had a pocket for the last 2 years that I've owned it. I've discovered it this morning conveniently.
First of all, thank you very much for joining us online and for joining us in person as well. And the volume of people speaks to the importance of these narratives that these young children shared with us. We'll be launching our report, but we'll be also launching a few other resources such as animations, but there will be also other stuff that we will be introducing you to. Starting with our positionality and identity. It's like a puzzle for me. It's very difficult for me to describe my own positionality and identity. Just to start with, I practice Hinduism. I'm married to a Sikh. I'm a mother to a 2-year-old boy. Besides being a mother, I've also written books on identity construction and nationalism in educational spaces. I have worked with asylum seekers, refugees, and incomplete asylum seeking children in the UK for several years. I am very passionate of using art-based participatory methods to give voice and agency to children. And collaborating with Surya and Alison on this project has also given me a new perspective of how to give this medium or how to establish a medium to give this agency to children and to explore these new expressions of identity. That's a bit about me.
Hi, I'm Alison Helford and I'm co-investigator on this project. One of the reasons why we start off explaining our positionality is to acknowledge the limitations that come with that positionality. That in encountering these experiences, we all look through a particular lens. And so we wanted you to be transparent that in my case, my positionality comes that I am a white female, that I am a mother of 8 children, and my work is informed by my own religious convictions. So in that way, it was very important that I understood that we are, from my perspective, this work was filtered as that Cantonean lens, you know, that idea that for me, I had insights about religion that may or may not be the same if you had come from a different positionality. I am now also informed by the fact that I work a lot around now with AI and ethics, so that I brought to the project about considerations about ethics, because that often is not as much to the fore as you would think in the social work profession. It is an implicit understanding that you are ethical. And I think we need to make it explicit in what way you are ethical. So thank you, Saria.
Thank you, Alison. I mean, the reason I've got positionality on there is because I like talking about myself. No, I put positionality on there because, you know, like Alison said, who we are impacts the kind of work we produce. It impacts our worldview, it impacts how we see the world. It impacts the kind of research we do. I mean, I came here, and John said the story. I came here after adopting my little boy, or applying to adopt my little boy. Over 9 years ago, he's a terror now. He is Muslim, so maybe I shouldn't put that in the same sentence. But sorry, I'll be good. I'll be good. There are important people in this room and on there, people who I'm a little scared of as well, so I should be good. In terms of In terms of positionality, I came here very much with the experience of care, of adopting my children, of realizing there was very little about identity, of realizing I also wanted to make a difference. I'm also a feminist scholar, and feminist scholarship is all about listening to, hearing the voices of those at the margins. And when it comes to things like equality strands, when it comes to things like who is at the margins, vulnerable children and young people who are care experienced, it's very much, I think our work is very much about bringing their voices to the center, about listening to how they want to understand their identity, how they want to express their identity, how they want to be known, and are they being listened to? What is the care that they are receiving? Is it adequate? And how can we help? Because we don't know all the answers. I didn't know social work till about 8 years ago. I still feel, a bit scared of some of the people here. I've said that twice. That's how scared I am. But we have realized that the stories we tell, the narratives we bring, and the perspectives to children and young people's identities really have value. Over the last 8 or 9 years, we've seen people listen to our work, implement it. I've had one social worker tell us that she uses one of our briefings to understand her own family. Now, I don't know whether I should be scared, a bit worried about that, but or be really pleased. But our work has had impact, and I think that is why we are here today. In terms of the project background, Alison and me, a good few years ago, did a piece of work that we're very grateful to the charity Penny Appeal, to somebody called Tejiva, whose name I saw on the screen, to the Department for Education for funding a piece of work that looked at Muslim heritage children in care. Now, the category Muslim is diverse, it's ethnically diverse. And we began to understand the complexities and the nuances of, around how children's identities are expressed and understood in the care system. And we trained lots of social workers, and we had a lot of fun doing the work, and we felt we were making a difference. But there was a massive gap in that work, in not just our work, but in existing scholarship. And the gap was, children and young people weren't being listened to. So we came to the Nuffield Foundation and said, would you fund us, please, to talk to children and young people about their identities? And Nuffield thankfully said yes. So that's how we are here today. That's the background of the project. We aim to listen to minoritized, looked after children and young people's narratives of ethnicity, religion, and identity, and how their identity needs are met or not. So that was the aim of the project. And that's the report that's come out of it. This is that big reveal, wave it around. Yeah, that wave it. But our names are on this report, but this work would not have been, this is a group effort. It takes, I think Shakib's here, and he talks about how it takes a village to bring up a child. Well, it takes a village to, produce something like this. So we're really, really grateful to Nuffield for funding our work, to Ash, to Rob, to Ellen. Ellen has, held us, kept us in hand. Thank you, Ellen. Ash's name actually appeared twice in the acknowledgements in a draft, and I thought I'd keep it there, but no, we edited it out. So thank you. Your name is still there, Hans, in the first paragraph. So yeah, thank you, Rob, for being so supportive. Our academic home, Coventry University, has allowed us to do the work. We had great advice from all our advisors, a few of whom are here in this room today and on screen. I'm not going to name everybody because I'll miss somebody's name and then offend them. So I don't want to do that. We've had mentorship over the years. I personally have had mentorship from the man who introduced our project standing there a few minutes ago, but I'm not taking names. Gatekeeper access, we've had recognition, we've had impact, working with research and practice, with CVAA, with CORE and BAF to deliver training. It is an opportunity. I mean, we really value the fact that people will listen to us, and all of you who've come here today to listen to us speak. So thank you very much. And there are names in the report, but I won't take any. And yes, our long-suffering yet proud families who've traveled around with us while we've done field work and, presenting. And my son, who heard me deliver a workshop to social workers once and then said, "Mummy," comes back to me later and says, "Mummy, am I vulnerable?" I'm like, "Yeah, probably, you have me as a mother." Alison.
Right, okay, so we normally start with any kind of presentation, we bring out the facts. Now, these facts are openly available, anyone can do this. And I just really want to bring to the fore 3 key points why we use it. First and foremost, we do not know enough about the religiosity of children. They record the religious identity of those that foster, those that adopt, but they do not record children because they say it's too difficult. Central government says it's too difficult. Now, the issue for that is, how are you going to make plans? How are you going to fund if you do not know the scale? And one of the things we do know is that there is an increasing number of children, minoritized children, coming to care because there is a increasing number of minoritized children in the country. So statistically, that kind of does it. So this is really one of the things that I would like, if you take away anything, that you advocate, that you try and find a way of we're having a central figure. So we know where it is, but also within your regions, in your even some local authorities, when we asked for a freedom of information request, did not know the scale. They had them in individual case notes. And I think that requires some really critical interrogation. The second thing I want you to draw attention to is that we're seeing increasing number of unaccompanied asylum seekers coming into care. Now, this presents a different set of standards in the sense that they come already with their identity to an extent, information. So they can present themselves in a particular way and judgments are made about their particular identity. And I think, this is, so the provision is often either made as if they were an adult, or they infantilize them. And I think that, again, if you're trying to accommodate them, their complexity of their identity, you need to think about them not as not project onto them these kind of stereotypes. And then the third thing I really want to take away, which I really pondered about, what is it that I feel that, if you draw anything from the research, one of the things that we found consistently is what we call the halal principle. When we ask, how do you provide for religion, the default setting is we give them access to halal food. And that is a very tangible, visible marker of someone's religion. And what we felt really was critically important for you to hear was about those nebulous, those more abstract concepts of religion. Those, the eternal negotiations that go on with young people when they are trying to make sense of their, these existential questions. Who am I? What do I believe? Is there a bigger power? And are they having spaces to explore that? And whether they wish to remain religious or decide that they no longer wish to identify with that label, we need to ensure that we have strategies so they can exit their biological sort of faith heritage in a way that allows them to still find a meaning, and I think this is really critical. If we talk about it binary, religious or not, that becomes, I think, very limiting. So that is, if you take away anything, start to think about religion, not about the outward, and start saying, are we making provision for them able to speak freely about those more complex, more challenging, more uncomfortable conversations?
How did we do the research? And we're not really going to dwell, very long on this. But for us, it was really important to look at ideas of minoritization as one aspect of our methodological approach. Why minoritization? It's because it acknowledges this act of identifying a particular group, either because of their religion, because of their ethnicity, because of their gender, because of their sexuality. Identifying them as a minority is not, it's not a noun. It's not that they are a minority. It's really a societal act of suddenly describing this group that may be a global majority elsewhere as a minority and essentializing them. And rather than essentialize, we wanted to interrogate what are the societal processes that position a particular group as a minority, what impact does that have on their identity, what impact does that have on how they are perceived and the care they receive. We used lived religion rather than religion. And there's a difference. Religion is textual, it is about theology, it is about dogma, it is about text. Lived religion is about negotiation. It is about your own path, about defining how you want to be a Christian or a Hindu or a Sikh, and how that desire is shaped by all the stimuli around you. Intersectionality was key, absolutely key to our work. And this is because religious understanding changes. It changes in terms, on the basis of your ethnicity. Your understanding of ethnicity changes on the basis of your religious identity. And then all these other aspects come in. So, for our project framework, for our aims and objectives, we use religion and ethnicity as the main lens. But we understand that both of those are shaped by everything else that a young person is. Indeed, in our work, and we will talk about it later on and we discuss it in the report, some of our traditional identity categories, religion, ethnicity, gender, sexuality, young people don't even want them. They want other categories that are new and different and which they feel align better with who they are and the care they want. So those, I think I've spoken about that, and I'm going to hand over to Kusha. Yeah, I'm taking that. Oh, okay, I'm taking that. So there you go. I'm not the most organized. I like to think in terms of our work and in terms of our outcomes, in terms of the stories that Kusha is actually going to tell us, isn't it? Yeah, she is going to confirm. In terms of the stories that she's going to tell us and that I'm going to tell you, and then Alison's going to bring in some stories as well. We want, and really all our work. We have this 3-point framework. We want you to think, we want to encourage, you in this room, everybody else online, and people who will read this report and who will attend, some of our training workshops. We want to encourage you, we want to encourage frames of references, see religious and cultural heritage as a broad spectrum of engagement. We have encountered and we have heard stories of young people for whom their ethnicity is the be all and front all of their identity. Religion is somewhere else. We've had other people for whom, ethnicity doesn't matter at all. They might belong to a minoritized ethnic group, but they don't see it that way. It doesn't matter. And you have the same sort of spectrum with religion, the same sort of spectrum with ethnicity, with gender, with sexuality. We've had young people who've said, their trans identity is absolutely central to who they are and the care they want. And we've had other people who've told us, being a lesbian, for example, it was just something normal. It didn't really come to the fore of their, everyday existence. So think about all of these identity categories as a broad spectrum of engagement. Think about identity that moves away from rigid understandings of ethnicity or religion, or you fill in the blanks there, towards a more fluid sense. And that's different from broad spectrum. When we say fluid sense of identities in flux, we know that, and we're going to tell you stories of a young person who was deeply religious one day, and then 2 years later was non-religious, and then a few days later decided, maybe religion means something in my life. Maybe I want to come back to it. So allowing, we don't want to set, we are suggesting that frontline practice moves away from these essentialized categories and recognize that children will change and want to change, and their identities are in a state of formation. And finally, we say practice needs to learn from young people and children about, their everyday cultural and religious norms. A Black Muslim might have a completely different everyday habitus as compared to a South Asian Muslim, and so on for Christian and Hindu communities. So we really want that movement. We often tell social workers when we've finished our training with them, we're not here to give you answers. We're not here to make your job easier. We're probably making it harder by complicating discourses around identity. But that complication is what we need. Now I'm going to change the slide. Yes, it is you.
That's me.
Sorry, Kusha.
Thank you. So as we said about the habitus, we spoke to a very diverse group of 26 young people. And we designed the instrument as in solely around art-based participatory methods. But what we did with these children is we give them the agency to choose the medium they want to choose. Most importantly, the space they want to choose to express their expressions of identity, ethnicity, and religion. It was very, very important for these young children. When I say about the avenues, I want to give you a few examples. So one participant actually took me on a virtual tour of his art gallery. He showed me the art pieces marked with different phases of his migration in the UK. The colors and the shades on those artworks talked about his emotions in understanding his identity and his negotiations with identities. Another participant who gained asylum in the UK actually sent me a few pictures of his council house. He told me that, look at the interior decor, these pieces or these changes in the interior decor talks about my identity, talks about my way of coping in the UK during this hard time. Another participant who identified themselves as transgender spoke about her expressions of identity through Milan and markets in London. I wasn't aware of that, but she told me what these markets are and what they do in terms of her understanding of her heritage. Another participant invited me to her household, took me to the temple with her favorite god statue in her hand, talks about her adoption journey from a lower caste to a higher caste Hindu family in the UK. But in this gallery of open expression, we also came across participants who were very silent, like silent poetry, who were reluctant at the beginning. But then they shared some alternative sources of expressions with us. A participant of mixed heritage, shared a 1 million view TikTok handle with me and said, go to this handle and see what do I talk about in terms of my identity and what my viewers have been asking about. And another participant, 13-year-old boy of mixed heritage, actually read few extracts from his book on his life in care. 13-year-old boy, and he said, one day you'll see me, I'm going to be famous, and remember me. So bringing this narrative of resilience and the desire of having a family, a career, were only shared with us when we give them that agency, that space, and that's actually amplified their voices in our piece of research. And we'll be sharing some narratives in the following slides.
You need to skip ahead a few. We put the animations in, so skip again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Skip again and again.
Oh, skip that.
And then again.
Skip again.
Oh, thank you.
So our first narrative of Anna. So when we're thinking of layered identities, I thought I'll bring the story of Anna, whose layered identity reflects this integrated intersections of her religion, her ethnicity, and personal experiences. So in the moment of self-reflection, she drew a picture of the Black Lives Matter fist, representing her own Blackness. And on reflection, she shared that she found profound empowerment through this moment, and she found profound pride in her heritage through this moment. Within the drawing, she also added the picture of crown, representing the symbol of royalty and strength. Like other African caregivers, Anna also shared her experiences of racism, discrimination, even from those who were supposed to care for him. In the foster placement, she said she was labeled as angry Black lady. And she was also not given the basic support for her hair and her skin. But on further reflection, she shared with us that this particular crown and this particular picture does not refer to anger. To her, it was a matter of strength, like a queen, and she reflects herself as a strong queen lady or a woman. Anna's story also reflects on the successful foster placement, and she gives this credit to one foster parent who referred to her layered identity, who made us sit with her and spoke to her about her layered identity. The foster parent asked her, "Who are you, Anna? Tell me a bit about yourself." And since then, this open discussion, this meaningful participation with Anna made her believe in foster home, and that foster home gave her that avenue where her identity was respected, supported, but not constrained. And also, this foster placement was very crucial for her. She told us that there was no pressure on her to align with the foster parents' culture, nor there was a preconceived notion of blackness. Can we share the next narrative of Mark? Now, we also heard many participants who shared, their stories of struggles transitioning into the new environment and the significant impact of that on their identity. I want to share you the story of Mark, African Black caregiver who came into care after losing his parents, devout Muslims, in car accident, and his Christian uncle adopted him and took care of him in this tragic time. Uh, During his journey, Mark shared with us that he started to pay loyalty towards Christianity and started to believe in Christian beliefs. And he also shared that he wasn't sure when this happened, when this transition happened. But when we spoke about his Muslim faith or Muslim belief, he was very happy and felt proud in recalling his Muslim name. Mark also shared her lived experience or her everyday experiences of facing racism and discrimination in school, not being admitted to the football coach because of his color, because of his distinct accent, because of his migration status. His uncle was aware of these problems, but he could not really help Mark negotiating with these issues. And we asked Mark, and what did he do? And Mark said that he found peace in his Christian beliefs. He started going to church. He found a sanctuary of peace and started to embrace his identity even more with the community at the church. And he said his time spent at the church gave him courage to actually fight with some of the challenges that he was facing in the external world. With that, I would like Surya to share the story of Alina with us.
Thank you, Kusha. And this is me. I know that for a fact. Alina was somebody I interviewed, a young Pakistani quote unquote Muslim woman. She came into care. She didn't tell me why she came into care. She said, I don't want to talk about that at all. And I think it's really important in all of these stories and reading our report to think about what was said and what was unsaid. Alina did not want to talk about the circumstances that brought her into care because, she wanted to hide away. She wanted to move away from them, keep them away. That was something very personal. But what she did talk about was her ethnicity, talk about her religious identity. Alina came from a family that was deeply, deeply religious, deeply Muslim. She says the only thing she knew prior to coming into care was Islam. Even the songs she sang were Muslim religious songs. She comes into care at the age of 11 or so. Couple of years later, with her foster carers, she manages and her social workers, she negotiates that. She wants to go to Saudi Arabia, perform at Makkah and Medina, the holy cities, perform the lesser pilgrimage. We have to say she did have some agency there because she managed to negotiate it all. And with her foster carers went, performed the Umrah. And then you can see the black box on your screen. It's actually a brick structure covered with sort of black tapestry called the Kiswa. She says, I held that and I wept. It was such a spiritual moment for me. And she was deeply moved by it. She recollects that spiritual, moment that she had. Now, I interviewed her a couple of years later after that, after she made that trip. And I said, so what's your religious, are you religious now? Because she spent time telling me that story. And she said, actually, I'm not religious at all now. Religion doesn't matter to me, except when I go and see my family, my biological family. That's when I feel a bit, a little pang, but actually religion doesn't matter. I asked about ethnicity. She said, I'm Pakistani. I said, what does your Pakistaniness mean to you? And she said, oh, it means we pray and we fast and we practice Islam. So again, a young person sort of conflating ethnicity with religion. So I said, what really matters to you now then? And she says, football, which I could talk about because I have a football crazy person at home. And she said, makeup. And I floundered a bit. But I rallied. I do not bring these two things up in jest. I think it's really important we listen to young people when they say what matters to them. For her football, she trekked halfway across town, 2 buses, 40 minutes to go to a football team that was all girls. She said that was really important to her, although there was a football team next to her, down the road from where she lived. That says something. I wondered, and that's what as academics do. I wondered, was she trekking? Was she making that trek because she wanted to be with an all-female group? Was that a residual, of her earlier Islamic morality? Now, I don't know. Alina didn't want to talk about that. We decided we were going to talk about makeup and yeah. But, and I'm not going to make my usual jokes about makeup today because I'm behaving. But what Alina said to me is when she was younger, a few years ago, she'd use what she described as really pancakey makeup. She said, I wanted to hide my skin tone. I wanted to fit in the society, that I'm living in. And so she lightened her skin tone. She described it as pancake makeup. She said she'd done fancy things to her hair, which I didn't understand, so forgive me. Now I feel I'm still a good researcher. But now, and she's a bit older, she says, I use makeup to enhance my skin tone rather than hide it. Over the years, she had become more comfortable with who she was, with her identity, with negotiating her identity with her foster carers and with the social workers who cared for her. I asked her, we're doing all this research and we'll be talking to important people in lovely rooms. What do you want us to tell them? And she said, when it comes to children and young people's identities, tell them we're still forming a sense of who we are. We're still developing as individuals and give us that space to find who we want to be. That's Elena's story. We could tell you lots of stories, really emotive, really, really moving stories, but we've got to finish. We don't want to bore you, and you can read our report. You won't read our report. It will tell you everything now. But we came up with this idea of influx identities to act as a theoretical space because we're academics, but also as a practical space, as ideas through which social workers can negotiate with, talk to, understand, and listen to children from minoritized backgrounds. These identities are negotiated. And in negotiating these identities, all sorts of things come into play, all sorts of internal and external stimuli, their own sense of self, but also how they want to represent themselves to the people around them. Are they going to code switch in terms of the language they use, in terms of the accents they use, in terms of what they wear? Are they going to say something? We had unaccompanied asylum-seeking children tell us that their narrative of identity changes after they receive their formalized paperwork. What is it? What all these stimuli that shape how young people negotiate who they are and how they want to be perceived. These identities are really nuanced. They're intersectional. They change with different aspects of people's identities. We spoke to a young Afghan lad who said at the top of his identity, he put his Muslimness. Then he put his Afghaniness. And we said, what do you mean by your Afghaniness? And he said, it's his food, it's his culture. And then the third rung of his identity, he put his disability. But as we interrogated the interview. And that's been really, we're here to listen to young people, but at the same time, in this particular case, we've ended up putting our own perspective as well, because as we listened to him, we realized that his disability was actually at the fore of his needs in terms of his identity, in terms of his culture, but also his practical needs, where he lived and the kind of care he needed. On the one hand, he was devaluing his disability as an aspect of his identity. Yet when we listened back to his nearly 2-hour-long interview, disability came up over and over and over again. And so enabling social workers also to ask these questions. And finally, this sort of influx identity has to be empowering for the child or the young person. Children and young people who told us, they're not to be defined by their vulnerabilities. They're not to be defined by their care experience, but they wanted to be defined by the skills and the values and their strengths. They were artists and storytellers and, wannabe mums. The wannabe mum is already a mum now. Well, very nearly a mum, a few months away being a mum. And they wanted us to recognize them, and they wanted professionals in their lives to recognize them on the basis of these strengths. And that is really influx identity. That is really the heart of this research report that was produced by a village of people, led by the three of us, but also by all the people who gave us access to young people, who mentored us to think about identity, and actually, crucially, the young people themselves, some of whom are in this room and who will talk to us a bit later. Very quickly then, and this I'm not going to dwell on this very long at all. How do we provide for minoritized children's multiple realities and layered identities?
The following animation.
Skip again. There. Yeah? Yeah, so we've been working with research in practice, and you're going to hear from Julie Wilkinson a bit later, but they've been really, we academics, we talk about all these big words and, we have these big ideas, but translating it into practice, into tools that social workers can use. We've worked with research and practice to do that. There is a frontline briefing. There is a toolkit that is all sort of being launched today. We're delivering training sessions with CVAA, with Quorum BAF, and 5 or 6 open access sessions with research and practice. We've had an amazing community outreach event with the Coventry Muslim Forum that was attended by over 150, 200 people. And I think some of our colleagues from Coventry are in the room there. I can certainly see Zelma there. I don't know whether the others are, I can't see them, but this was about taking these findings back to communities and getting them to understand, children's identities are complex. We often go to a community group and they'll say, they want us to say that all Muslim children should be placed in Muslim adoptive and foster homes, and all Christian children should be placed in Christian adoptive or foster homes, but it isn't that. It is much more complex, and we need homes that can meet children's identities. And that event was very much about making sure communities have access, and we're very pleased to report that hopefully there'll be more workshops like that coming out of that work, because the community wants to continue, various communities want to continue working with us. Moving forward, and this is the last slide, we have been invited by United Religions Initiative to share our work with a cross-European panel of interfaith leaders. We think that is important in taking these narratives to people who can then take them to their flocks, so to say. I've mentioned the training already. We're very grateful to the Heritage Lottery Fund. We're going to be doing a bit of work with them. We are doing a bit of work with them to look at how Black social workers, the 70s, 80s, 90s, experienced these same debates around identity that we are talking about today. I mean, from my history work, I know that the historical distance sometimes allows for the harder questions to be asked and answered. We're working with Bernardo's, hopefully, and Fran is there. And we'll be taking some of these findings and working with frontline social workers, with children and young people to see how we can create safer spaces for Black children to talk about identity. My family group and Shakib is here. They want us to run workshops around with communities in Cardiff, in Leicester, elsewhere, so that people who are not social workers and not academics and not policymakers, all and who are not care experienced, also understand some of these debates. We heard yesterday that we may have the opportunity to take this work pan-European so that we can bring differing debates around immigration, differing debates around what is, a minoritized population, Eastern Europe, Western Europe, all of these differing conversations. We may, that's not a confirmed thing yet, we may have the opportunity to do more work in this field. And I think I'll end there. We're ever so grateful to have produced this. We're ever so grateful for all your support. And we hope we can continue to occupy this space and make a difference. And that's where we shall end. Thank you very much. This animation was produced by a group of care leavers. They're in the room here. Michael Ross, who's a social worker with Coventry University. We're really grateful. But these young people came together, they thought about identity, they produced it completely on their own, and we're so proud of it. So thank you very much, ladies and Michael. Go on.
It's worthy of it.
This animation was developed by young people in care. We developed it for you to consider our cultural needs.
My culture forms a big part of who I am. The way I dress, how I style my hair, the food I eat, and the ceremonies I want to attend are all part of that. You can support me by respecting those differences and helping me get to ceremonies so I can continue important traditions.
How I look and how people see me are really important. I really need support to maintain my hair, which is often harder to manage and may need products that are not as easy to find.
Great to be treated as equals while celebrating and respecting our differences. Just taking the time to find out about our cultural differences and what makes us feel close to who we are and where we're from really makes a massive difference. Coming into care can be scary, but with your understanding of what we need to feel at home and be ourselves will make the transition much easier.
Well, how do I come on after that? I've got like the graveyard shift now, haven't I? Because I don't think there's more that we can say. Thank you so much. Thank you, because I spent 11 years in Coventry, and I think I even recognise one or two, yeah. But it's all love. It's all love, okay? And so I'm so proud. I'm so proud actually with that association, and I'm so delighted to be able to give a response to this amazing piece of work. So I'm really sort of feeling quite privileged actually to be asked by the Foundation to give the response. And obviously today and the learning we've had and the conversations have just taken us to a place where it's so felt and it's so meaningful. And that's what you feel when you read reports, read this report and read this research. So I want to thank this group of women over here. I know you talk about the team and the village, but it's your wondrous selves, yeah, that have brought this to us. And I want to acknowledge that. Okay, it's really important. So for those of you who don't know me, and there's a few in here who don't know me, I'm a bit like that young woman that said they know about me. They knew about me when I was coming as well, darling. I actually work as Associate Director for Practice and System Impact for the Nuffield Family Justice Observatory, which is part of the Foundation. And my focus is on system and practice impact. I lead on the Young People's Programme and the Equalities Programme. My background, though, is in children and family social work. I've spent over 30 years being a social worker. And although I describe myself as a sort of what I call a street level social scientist, I'm not a researcher and I'm not an academic. So I do feel a little bit of a fraud here, because obviously the honour of this response today really is to go to Ash for me, because Ash is the person who had the profound insight to see the importance of this proposal and this work and what implications it had for potential futures for justice and the space around before justice, children's social care, through justice, family justice and criminal justice and youth justice. So I want to sort of give acknowledgement to you, Ash, and tapping me on the shoulder and saying to me, you'll be interested in this piece of work, Beck. It's looking very promising and interesting, which is wonderful. And I was lucky that Ash introduced me to the wonderful professor. Now I'm going to get it wrong because I've got nieces, two nieces who are Muslim children practicing called Sharia, but it's Sharia, right, that's it, spelled the same, Sharia. I spoke to her in the early months of last year, and she was so gracious in sharing with me the theorisation, modelling, and the real-world impact she was already having with this work. And I knew that it had real potential for impact within and outward of to children's social care. However, it's published at a time where there's a real inflection point for children's social care in England. There's a new national framework for children's social care, which shifts at every level of the system and is aiming to shift at every level of the system. The state and its actors support and care for some of society's most vulnerable, and as clearly evidenced with these young people and those in the research, resilient, some of the most resilient children in our society. So this shift of emphasis doesn't go away from the essential underpinning of what the Children Act said, which was that children should be sort of supported to be raised up in their families and if safe to do so, and families and children should receive that support. But there is a real shift towards promoting the need to keep children together in loving, stable family homes, and to ensure that we replicate this experience in the care given to children who can't grow up in the same household of their families. It's not that they're not growing up with their families, because families continue to exist, interconnect in the lives of children, but are not in that household. So this includes a significant emphasis on keeping children within connected family and friends networks. And just a little aside, given that I'm a kinship trustee, I do believe this research has relevance to the children not being brought up by their parents, but with other relatives and close connected people. So not in stranger care, but in outside of the family home. So I'd love to talk to you more about that. Okay. I want to congratulate these wonderful three women for the profound insight, light and hope they've brought to this area of research, this space. The care experiences of marginalised and minoritised children, who we know are overrepresented in care populations, are revealed in this research as the profound human challenges the care experience is. As an experience, it is an experience of uncertainty and impermanence, whose constituted actors, the young people, the carers, the parents, the families, are seeking and contending with the human desire to belong, to feel stable, to be safe and to be recognised. Care experience even is an over the life course experience, and those not experienced in care never have to live through or live with that. And I speak as somebody who is care experienced and who is 58 and is still journeying through that journey as a consequence of not growing up in the family and household of my parents. There are three further points I want to make. As to kind of obviously clearly saying, this is a NUFL funded research project, and it meets all the requirements that entails: academic and methodological rigour, new knowledge, new theory, relevance and impact in changing societies. It is also research steeped in intersectionality, and this research illustrates how intersectionality as a lens on the multiple realities of human experiences opens up the space for the complexities of the social lives of children and their social living to be expressed, the lives of marginalised children, the inter and intersubjectivities of the children's expressions, and then that connectedness to that external stimuli. I love the way you use that in your research. Shaping and evolving identities held by the children is extremely liberating. The lives of minoritised children are recognised not as a single story or through a single lens, which so much of the work can fall into. That recognition is something I want to thank you personally for, to you researchers. I will never refer to the Black care experience again. I will talk about my Black care experience. And I think I wanted to make that statement to you. So, for social work, the exploration of religion, and you touched on this, Alison, in some of the conversation you had, the exploration of spiritual dimensions so many children bring with them into the care system is a challenge for social work itself. It doesn't do faith very well. And in fact, it can do faith in ways that are harmful, as Alison was describing to us earlier, or harmful because we are making assumptions that because a child may have had a practice, that is what they must have now. We're not recognising, you know, the shifting nature of identities. But if we don't get to grips with and think about religion, spiritual dimensions, as given to us in this research, we'll be failing many children. We need that sensitivity and that cultural humility in the practice to enable that to happen. The other importance for me, and this is my final point, is obviously the influx identity model. It goes beyond social workers and social work. You've already talked about it in terms of thinking around how we help community, family, context to deal with some of the real challenges we have in cross-generational, cross-class, cross-expectation struggles that we have. But it's also applicable in other systems of care. And I, particularly in family justice, very much see this model as something we could work with and support children's lawyers who represent children in proceedings, CAFCAS officers, judges and magistrates who have a legal duty under Sexual and Children Act to give due consideration to a child's background, culture, ethnic and religious and other specific characteristics. So I'm not going to say much more than that because I just want to hold it as it's beyond itself. There's a term that I'm going to use, which is, this may feel like and look like in terms of a smaller qualitative project. It's a smaller project. I've seen some bigger projects that we funded, but you know, we have a saying in the Caribbean, which is, you're small, but you're taliwa. You are huge. It is huge, the impact it's having and will have, in my view. So thank you so much for bringing it to us. Thank you so much, Ash, for having the insight to back it. And thank you so much for all of you coming here today, because we're going to go away and I think do something wonderful and further with it in terms of impact, particularly for me around family justice. So thanks very much for listening. Thank you so much. Thank you. And thank you. It's all about love.
Julie, can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. So I don't have any profound words to follow on from Beverly, but I do want to point to the resources that we've produced with Soraya and her team at Research in Practice. And it does build on what has been said throughout about the importance of social workers understanding the messages that have been put forward today. And I think one of the things that we do and that we do fairly well at Research in Practice is to translate those research evidence messages into practice. And I know Soraya and her team have worked incredibly hard, and it is very hard to condense fairly long academic research report into something that busy social workers will read, that they'll engage with. And that's what we have done in producing the frontline briefing, which is aimed at frontline social work practitioners, but not just social work practitioners. It can be used by any professionals working with children who want to explore identity, be that with minoritised children and young people in care, or children who are not minoritised. So it can be used across the board. And I think what we've been able to do through this is to think about the stories that have come out of the research, think about the methods that were used, and to use those to create reflections for frontline practitioners to think about in much more depth than just reading a research report, about how they might use these findings in their day-to-day practice, and how they might change their practice going forward. So within the briefing, there's lots of reflective activities for social workers, and also activities around how they can explore identity with children and young people, and support children and young people with their identities going forward. So there's lots of really useful information in there. So if you're able to, it would be great if this could go beyond the Research in Practice Partner Network and go beyond it, because all the resources are open access. So they're open to anybody, anybody can read them. So that's the briefing that Saria was talking about, and I hope it's useful going forward. But in addition to that, as also on the website, we've got a podcast with Kusha and Saria talking about the research, talking about their research methods, and also about the findings. So again, really useful for people who, you know, are in their car, who want a quick listen. So that is on the website, and again, open access. And again, what was referred to earlier was around the 6 workshops that we're running between the end of January and the end of March. Again, these are open access, they're on our website. Anyone can sign up for them. They're again aimed at frontline practitioners, but anyone can come along and to those workshops. They're full day workshops, so they run from 9:30 till 3 in the day. And with those, there'll be lots of, again, reflective activities, opportunities to work in small groups, to think about their people's practice and practice going forward. So that's what we've got on our website, and I do hope that you will engage with these materials and also cascade them much more widely, because as it's been said before, it's really important research, and I think there's a lot to be learned from it. So that's all I want to say, and I'm sure you're all ready for your celebratory cake, so I'll stop going on now and let you get to your celebratory cakes. Thank you.
Okay.
The following animation has been produced by a team of animators from Beluga Animation, working in collaboration with a team of researchers from Coventry University, funded by the Nuffield Foundation. This research project worked with care-experienced children and young people from minoritised backgrounds to explore how they understand their identities in order to inform policy and practice around their care needs. By speaking with children in care, this research sheds light on their relationships to their own identity and offers some guides that can significantly improve their experience. Listening. Each child has a unique sense of their own identity and everyday cultural and religious norms. This sense of who they are is largely determined by their socio-cultural contexts prior to coming into care, but is also still forming whilst in care. By listening to each child's unique conception of what identity means to them, we can create an environment that fulfills their unique needs and allows them to thrive. Transcultural placements. Identities are complex, so it is important to consider the identity needs of each child when finding them a carer. If a child's ethnicity or religion do not match with their carers, these characteristics can still be catered for by listening to the child, so they can learn things about their culture, bodies, cuisine, skin and history. And commonality and shared interests can still be found. Life story work. It's important for social workers and carers to include any nuances of each child's identity in their life story books, so that this is available to them later in life should they want to reflect upon it.
My name is Reema. I was adopted at the age of 4. Both me and my adoptive parents are of Indian ethnicity and followers of the Hindu faith. Yet there are important differences in our identities. My biological family were lower caste and my skin tone is much darker than my higher caste adoptive families. I do have a deep sense of loyalty and love for my adoptive parents and the privileges of my higher caste life. However, I can't help but feel that my lower caste roots truly define me even more than my gender or religion. My adoptive parents listened to me and helped me to engage with the aspects of my own identity that were important to me, like helping me to explore my profound enthusiasm for Bharatnatyam, a type of Indian classical dance, and making a temple sanctuary for me in a home that allowed me to exercise the strong bond I have with Hinduism and Lord Ganesha, despite not being religious themselves. This has helped me to create a strong connection between my home in the UK and previous home in India.
My name is Anna. I came into care aged 11. Prior to coming into care, I lived with my biological family who were not religious at all. When I moved in with my second set of foster carers, a Christian family, I really liked their practices and beliefs. They have stayed with me ever since and become a very important part of my identity. My foster family understood that I didn't grow up with much religion, and they took the time to listen to my questions and help me to understand my newfound beliefs and practices. My attitude towards my ethnicity has changed too. I experienced a lot of racism during my life, often from people who were supposed to be caring for me. My needs were devalued, and I often didn't have access to basic skin or hair support. When I challenged this, I was labelled as an angry black girl. But my latest foster family listened and understood me. They supported me to take care of my skin and hair, and even helped me to join a local art class that has helped me to express my feelings towards my ethnicity. Through my art, my relationship to my ethnicity has changed. I no longer feel like the angry black girl I was always told I was. I am now a proud, strong black queen.
Positive identity development can build children and young people's resilience as they journey through care. So, by listening to children in care and trying to understand their unique identity needs, placing them with families who can contribute positively towards their identity, and by recording their journeys to help them understand their own development down the line, we can significantly enhance the experience of children in care and help them to thrive. To find out more about the expressions of self, race, religion and representation of care experienced children and young people research project, click on the link in the description.
We would like to acknowledge the funders, Nuffield Foundation, our project advisors and the Centre for Trust, Peace and Social Relations at Coventry University for their invaluable guidance and support. We would like to recognise the dedicated social workers and community groups whose assistance was crucial in facilitating our research. Most of all, thank you to the children and young people who shared their stories. Your voices are the cornerstone of our work.
but the trick is to do it without losing the meaning. So together with the amazing team at Coventry, we strive to communicate these findings and the emotions and get it all across in the animation, and hopefully we did that today. And I'd just like to say again that thank you very much for involving us in this. We are really proud to be a part of this project. And having listened to a lot of people here today, I know that we are far from the most interesting people here, but if anybody did have any further thoughts or questions, we'll stick around for a little bit, and we're very friendly, I promise, so feel free to come. Thank you.
Oh. Thank you. Well, what an amazing afternoon this has actually been. There are so many perspectives, so many lessons learned, so many experiences, direct experiences that those with lived experience have actually talked to us about in a very insightful, positive and important way, because it's also clear that we have some way to go when it comes to addressing all the issues that has actually been raised. A whole profession really needs to get on board with all of this. The way that services are designed and delivered, the support that's available to social workers and others of our other professions where these issues are equally important: health, therapy, and it's a big agenda. But boy, have we started very much influenced by everything that you've been doing over the last few years. And I know that for a university to kind of set up and enable you to start at the beginning and end up where you are now is not an easy task, but it clearly has come about as something which is really important and really helpful for us to think about. And there will be a lot to be said having another one of these events as this begins to take shape, and we can hear from those that have directly been influenced by that, exactly how that actually happened. So an afternoon. Congratulations to everybody. I'm very grateful. Thank you to everybody that's actually contributed to all of this. Fingers crossed for further discussions in time to come. So now we get our coffee and a celebratory cake.